Hello and welcome to this webinar, which is all about digital transformation in banking and financial services and how Eggplant can help you deliver a five-star digital experience in both consumer and back office systems through intelligent testing and monitoring. Mobile apps, check scanning, cross-platform online banking, back office systems such as Temenos, wealth management systems such as Microgen and Wealth365, insurance, ATMs, they're now all part of your digital experience. It's not just mobile banking, and we'll be talking about all of them today and showing you how Eggplant can help you deliver that five-star digital experience, as we have with other banks such as Citi, Nationwide, and Atom, one of the leading challenger banks, and many others. My name is Anthony. I'm the CTO here at Eggplant, and I'm joined by James, who's our lead technical consultant in financial services based in Philly. Right, so I'm sure most of you on this webinar already know just how critical digital experience is in banking these days. So these graphs, as a quick reminder, on the slide are from Pew Research, and they show that 65% of people in the US and the UK do all their banking online today, and almost everyone uses online banking sometimes. I think what we've got here, we've got about 5%, 8% sort of who are saying they never use online banking. And in terms of mobile banking, 40% of people are regularly using their smartphones for banking, with an additional 20% of people sometimes using their smartphone. But actually, these graphs are from a webinar I did about 2 years ago, and already they're significantly out of date given the rate of change we have in financial services at the moment. So if I just update those slides to show how the world's changed in the last 2 years and where we are now, you can see that the number of people doing all or some of their banking digitally, especially on mobile, has increased dramatically. I mean, on online banking, the number of people not doing any banking online has gone to almost zero, and the number of people exclusively banking online has gone up a lot. And again, in mobile, we really sort of hit that tipping point where it went from 40% doing all of their banking and maybe 20%, but still we had 40% of people doing no mobile banking at all, and that's really shrunk now down to about sort of 15%. So digital, definitely very important. And it's not only retail banking, as I said at the beginning. I mean, a lot of people, when they think of digital banking, their mind immediately goes to mobile banking, but all parts of financial services are going digital. Direct to consumer insurance, for example, grew 71% over the last year, according to Forbes, and major providers like MetLife, Aetna, Cigna, and ING are all starting to go direct. At the same time, asset managers and wealth managers have moved pretty aggressively down market, using automated advice and digital channels to give that advice to their clients, which they used to only do to sort of affluent, high net worth clients, now far more accessible, sort of hitting the mass market for wealth managers and asset managers. And not only is it not only mobile banking, but it's not only the front end. So all digital systems rely on back-end transaction systems. And while it may seem counterintuitive, these need to be considered when you're thinking about the digital experience. So kind of green screens and mainframes, they are actually really part of testing and your overall digital experience, because everything comes back to those systems in the end. Back office systems such as Temenos and customer systems for onboarding and that kind of thing, definitely part of that end-to-end digital experience. And any other system that can impact a customer experience needs to be considered. ATMs now increasingly have web technology in them for serving up the latest offers, or maybe some sort of customized user content. That's part of your digital experience. Payment devices such as the Ingenico device here, very much part of that payment system. So retail, wholesale, and back office users now really expect that digital experience from their financial institution. Now, I can definitely hear some of you saying, yeah, we all know this, we've got a digital experience. In fact, we've got several. But how good are those digital experiences? What about the quality? What about the performance? What about the experience? How many times have any of you guys on this webinar personally used an application that gave you a negative impression of the company simply because of that app experience? We need to be providing those differentiated customer experiences, providing what they want, when they want it, and how they want it, performant and stable, aesthetically pleasing, whether you're a bank, an insurer, or an asset manager. And the question is, are you delivering that 5-star digital experience today? And actually, the data here, and the data says that unfortunately, if you're in the financial services industry, you're probably not delivering a 5-star experience. You're probably delivering a 2.5, 3-star experience. So just going through and explaining some of this data here. So Net Promoter Score is a pretty widely used metric for customer satisfaction in the sort of digital experience world. It basically measures how likely is a user to recommend your app or your website to a friend, because really reputation, word of mouth, that's really the currency, that's the key thing in digital experiences, because their perception is very much informed by social media and that sort of peer-to-peer interaction. And as you can see from this data, which is from NPS Benchmarks, which is sort of a not-for-profit group that publishes lots of great data around NPS scores, FS is well below the average in terms of NPS. So whereas you've got people like retail and media up around the 60 mark, financial services is sort of coming in below 40. So definitely a significant difference there, which, given the amount people talk about digital experience in financial services, I always find it a little surprising when I see this data. But it's really not a surprise when you look at the priorities, I think, of testing and monitoring and what people are really doing, not just saying, within financial services. And we've got some data here on the right-hand side from Capgemini and the World Quality Report. So the first one's saying, is user satisfaction, is that a real goal? Is that a real objective as part of your testing and your monitoring? And here we can see that financial services, only 30% of people answered yes, whereas about 60% was the average across all industries. So only about half as many people in financial services are really basing or including user satisfaction as a goal in their testing and monitoring. So again, not a surprise, NPS is so low. And then when you look down at sort of more some of the other metrics, things like release cycles. Now, release cycles may sound like more of an efficiency metric, not that much to do with Net Promoter Score, but very much one of the key things that's been proven to drive customer satisfaction and around digital experiences is that speed of response. People are actually quite forgiving online in terms of errors compared to some of the things in the old days, but they expect those errors to be fixed very quickly. We actually published some website data a couple of weeks ago showing that actually a website being down for a short period of time is going to have a far lower impact on your customer retention than your website going slow, because people see a website being down as a very temporary situation. It'll be resolved quickly. As long as it is resolved quickly, they'll forgive you. But if the website's going slow, that's really part of delivering a consistent bad digital experience, and people will punish you a lot. And I think so the speed of response, that release cycle metric, is very important. And then the last one is, do you have a digital transformation being driven by senior management? I always find it surprising, again, how low that is in the financial services industry, given how much we do talk about digital transformation. But very much that's not a factor, and clearly that's impacting the NPS scores. Now, I should say there is an important exception here. So the challenger banks, these kind of born digital banks, they're only online. They were very much created in the digital era. They're typically only about 5 years or so. Bank Mobile is probably the biggest example in the US. Atom Bank is probably the biggest in Europe and the UK. And these guys have much higher NPS scores. They're closer to retail. And this is having an impact. We're seeing them attract more and more customers with their delightful digital experiences. Currently today, they're still a small fraction of the overall banking market, but definitely in those key growth demographics, so young people and sort of early adopters and people who move around different institutions a lot, these people are really going towards these born digital banks because of those great user experiences. And I think that's highlighting how important it is for banks to get their digital experience right. This is really becoming a key decisive factor in people as they are looking for a bank these days, and this is really laying down the challenge to the traditional banks. So digital experience is critical across all of financial services, banking and insurance, customer facing and back office, but most organizations are struggling in their digital transformation. The data here definitely suggests that there needs to be more of a strategic top-down drive to get the digital experience right. But to be fair, there are also definitely a lot of technical challenges that make digital transformation in financial services difficult. Now, I'm sure you guys on the webinar have a lot of first-hand experience of these, so I'm not going to go into them in detail, but just to kind of get the flavor out and remind ourselves of all those challenges. I mean, probably the most common cited challenge is mobile and browser fragmentation, which just exponentially increases your test matrix. So I know most of our customers within testing and monitoring for financial services and also retail and sort of other very digital industries, they tend to test at least 50 different platforms every evening. So clearly that's creating a bit of a challenge. In banking and in insurance, you've got to deal with all the legacy systems that end up really as the foundation for your new digital experience. It's a very heterogeneous technology environment. There's no such thing as a sort of top to bottom unified stack. You're always working across, 10 easy different systems that have all been integrated together, and some of those are definitely going to be legacy systems. At the other extreme, the rise of voice as a channel is a huge factor in financial services. Most financial institutions will launch or have launched some kind of virtual assistant in 2018. And this goes far beyond technology. So there's a technology challenge there, but also as firms design these bots, they're making a lot of user experience, a lot of branding choices, a lot of sort of omni-channel choices about when they want to get you off the virtual assistant and get you to call up and talk to a person. So I think voice as a channel creates a lot of challenges for testing, both technology challenges. So if you've got, we're not used to dealing with voice, of course, but also a whole world of usability and user experience challenges, which I don't think we're well set up for. Omni-channel and that need to simulate user journeys that move over lots of different apps, lots of different technologies, lots of different channels, such as making sure that your sort of desktop banking and your mobile banking are constantly in sync, making sure things like one-time passwords and two-phase authentication work properly. And I think with the advent of open banking and all the APIs, that's just going to get more and more of a challenge. So we need to make sure that someone using your mobile app or someone using your browser-based banking is seeing the same data at the same time as someone coming in via the API. And so that's very much how do we synchronize not just across systems, but across different levels in those systems. Digital meets non-digital, I think, is a really interesting one, which certainly creates a lot of fun challenges for us working with our clients. There's some of our more interesting use cases to deal with. And this is just the fact that across banking and insurance, a lot of stuff's digital, but certainly not all of it. And the digital world and the non-digital world need to be able to interact smoothly. The best example of this is check scanning or maybe form completion for a mortgage application. So a user journey starts off in the physical world with a check or a paper form, but then very quickly we want to move into the digital world and we want to make sure that that's a pretty smooth experience for the user. So I know check scanning is definitely one of the big use cases that has caused quite a lot of people to move banks in the US over the last 2 years. Custom devices are a challenge everywhere, in particular in banking. So, we've got ATMs, we've got payment devices, we've got all these different systems. And again, we need to be able to test them standalone, and we need to be able to test them interacting with other systems. Open banking, we've already talked about, just again, adds a whole new level, sort of a whole new dimension to the testing challenge. And then finally, although it's not really specific to financial services, the whole transformation to continuous integration, continuous delivery, and DevOps really needs to be mentioned. I mean, any digital transformation is going to have an element of DevOps and continuous delivery in it, quite rightly, and put the customer at the center of the development process. But in A recent survey I saw, and this is pretty consistent, 99% of respondents across IT ops, sort of on the monitoring side, and across test, said they're really struggling to transform their testing and monitoring into a DevOps world. And in particular, how they can transform testing to be about the customer, be about that business outcome, which is what you're really trying to test in continuous delivery, rather than just about the code. So digital experience is critical across financial services, but most organizations are struggling in their digital transformation. And these technical challenges here are certainly a key part of that challenge. Great, so that's the opportunity, and they're the challenges. Now, what is Eggplant and how can it help you deliver a 5-star digital experience? Well, fundamentally, Eggplant is all about transforming testing and monitoring to be about helping teams create amazing products that delight users and drive business outcomes rather than focusing on whether code complies with a specification. For a long time, I think testing's really kind of almost been this sort of compliance function. Does my code comply with my spec? Or monitoring, is everything behaving within sort of acceptable parameters? But really, that's important. That's part of the picture. But really, what we want to know is our product delighting our users? Is it making them happy? And is it helping them achieve what it is they want to achieve with our software? No bank, no insurer creates software for fun. They're creating that software to help a user achieve something and to achieve some business objectives of their own. And really, that's what we should be testing, not code. And that's what Eggplant's all about. There are 5 key things that are different about us. First is intelligent automation. So we use AI, analytics, scriptless models to expand automation beyond just test execution all the way along the testing and monitoring process. So, test generation, test recommendation, environment setup, results analytics, release analytics, anomaly detection, all these sorts of things, using automation more and more to create more efficiency and greater insight. Customer experience insight, I think, is a hugely exciting area and a real differentiator for us. So this is all about understanding what's the relationship between the technical behaviors of a product and the business outcome. So what is it about the product, the performance, the usability, the defects, the functionality that is driving whether people use your mobile banking app, whether people delete it, whether they just check their balance, or whether they're doing meaningful transactions? So that's customer experience insight. Universal Fusion Engine is all about the ability to test any device, any operating system, any browser at any level in a cross-platform and an end-to-end way. So being able to drive any use case from ATM to backend system to a user's device, being able to do that at the database level, the API, or the UI level, really just being able to drive anything in any situation, one-time passwords, two-phase authentication, all that sort of stuff. Full UX testing and monitoring, so it's not just about functionality. User experience involves functionality, performance, usability. We need to be testing and monitoring all of those, and we need to be making those accessible and easy. And then finally, release insights. The ability to predict the impact of a new release on users and business outcomes before they release. We have so much data in testing from the software development process, from our testing, from previous releases, so defects and support cases come in, but we just don't use that data to predict when I'm doing, version 3.7 of my app. So I've had a whole bunch of releases come before. I've got a whole lot of data. I know what I did then. I know what I've done that now. Can I use that data to predict the likelihood of this new release making customer satisfaction go up or down? We've got the data. We've got the methods. I just think we haven't used them enough, and that's one of the things we're doing. So great. So what does it actually look like? What does all that mean? Digital automation intelligence, that's the testing side. So the way it works is we start with a model of the application. So we don't work with scripts. They're a bit too low level. They make it very difficult to really focus on the user when you're working at the level of sort of click, tab, type, character. You need to be working at the same level that a user talks. Enter username, enter password, log in, enter transaction value, click, select now, all that kind of stuff. So we start with models, then we use automation intelligence to auto-generate tests and also select which of those tests we've just generated we're going to run. We can typically generate billions of test cases. So the decision about which are the best ones to run to maximize user experience is critical. Then the Universal Fusion Engine to be able to test anything. That's how we execute those tests: functionality, performance, usability. And we do that using our execution platform on Automation Cloud, which means it's very easy to scale up to thousands and thousands of tests a night. Once you're generating so many tests, the ability to execute them, the infrastructure becomes, of course, quite difficult to manage. So let's automate the management of that, and again, make it easy to run across lots of different systems. So we do all that, and then comes down into Release Insights, which is all about predicting, if I release my software now, what's going to be the impact on user experience. So that's the testing side. On the monitoring side, it's all about intelligent monitoring. It's about understanding what users are doing, the goals we're achieving, so transactions, typically in financial services, performance monitoring, and then predictive analytics to know what's going to happen, what's changed, and just get a lot of insight from the production domain. The most important thing, I think, though, when it comes to monitoring is using the fact that we've got visibility of the users and of the product to start building what we call customer experience insights. That understanding of how do the technical attributes and behaviors of the product drive the business outcomes. And that helps us focus on what we need to do. And that's, of course, the point of putting the testing and the monitoring together. So by putting the testing and the monitoring together, we can really achieve three things. The first is we can focus product development and testing on what users are doing and what's actually going to impact the business outcome. So the easiest example is your nightly smoke test. Most people pick 100 tests and they run them every night. But those tests quickly become out of date. And are they really the most important 100 tests you could be running? Well, by just looking at our monitoring, we can take the 100 tests that have been the most common journeys that users have done in the last 30 days, feed that into our testing, and make them the smoke test. Another good example is defect triage. So rather than triaging defects on technical severity, we can triage them based on what's the impact on the customer. So there may be a UI bug that's actually impacting all your customers, having huge impact on your business outcome. So for example, if you got sort of the cancel and submit buttons around the wrong way, you're likely to lose at least 20% of your transactions that way. But it could easily just be classified as a UI bug if you didn't have that visibility of the business outcome. At the same time, a crash, although of course a crash is never good, could be having a relatively small impact on your users. It could only be impacting a certain device, which only impacts a certain region, and really it's only impacting a handful of users. And so although one's a crash and one's a UI bug, actually when you flip it around and look at the business outcome, you really want to focus on the UI bug. So it's focusing, testing, triage on what users are really doing. It's focusing it on the business outcome, and then it's linking that customer experience insight with the release insights to be able to predict not only sort of the technical impact of releasing a product now, how many defects am I going to have, what's going to be the real performance in live, but really understand how that's going to impact your users, your user satisfaction, and the business outcome. And ultimately, of course, information is only great if you do something with it. What we want to be doing is identifying the areas that you can optimize in your application to really improve your business outcome. And then that's why when we put digital automation intelligence and customer experience insights together, we call that customer experience optimization. So this is all real, it's available, it's in the field. We work with a lot of FS institutions around the world. So for example, just two quick examples, we've worked with Citibank in the US as part of their digital initiative. Citi have been very successful in digital banking, and we've been part of that story, helping them most recently get from 3 stars to 4.5 stars in the App Store. And from the testing perspective, the key things we did was help get the release cycles down by 52%. And as I said, because digital experience very correlated with your ability to respond to feedback, and also by improving user perceived performance by 80%. And this comes back a lot to this, really coming at testing from the user perspective and testing the full user experience, not just code level, but really through the eyes of the user, and making sure that when we talk about performance, we're talking about time to render, first time to interaction, and all the things that really matter. Nationwide is another bank we've worked with, and with them, it's very measurable. We help them get their testing costs down by $7 million through intelligent cross-platform testing automation. So a really big success with Nationwide. Great. Now, clearly we don't have time on this webinar to go into all the capabilities of the Eggplant suite. So I'm just going to go through a few highlights now to give you the basic idea and make some of what I've just said a bit more real for you and give you a feel for what's really going on. And of course, James is then going to give a quick demo to make it all really real. And if you're interested in that, of course, please get in touch and we'd love to set up a demonstration for you. So on the screen now, what you've got is a product we call Eggplant AI. And there's really two things going on here. So you've got a model of the Citibank mobile banking application, and we're auto-generating tests. So each of those gray boxes is a sort of user activity. So something like, enter username, enter password, sign in, schedule transactions, view services, card management, all that sort of stuff. So we've got a model of the application, and then we're auto-generating scripts. Now, in the testing world today, because the creation of test scripts is kind of the bottleneck of most people's processes or maintaining them, people are very sort of just have this nature of, well, I can just, I just run on my tests. The problem is from this model, I think you could generate about 12 billion different tests, and no one can run 12 billion tests. We worked with Amazon for their mobile shopping app. Their model could generate 9.2 billion user journeys. And they said, not even Amazon can run 9.2 billion tests a night. So we can run a couple of thousand. So the next challenge, once you can auto-generate tests, the big challenge is, which tests should I run? Which are the ones that are going to help me improve the quality of my application, get the coverage I want, improve user experience. And so Eggplant AI, in addition to auto-generating tests, it's also like a recommendation engine. It looks at those 9.2 billion tests and it says, which one should I run next to maximize the likelihood of improving user experience and getting the coverage I want? So Eggplant AI, it's a form of model-based testing, it's auto-generating tests, and it's then selecting which are the best tests to run to to improve your user experience. Now, obviously, you may look at that model and say, that makes a lot of sense, but that's quite high level. How does that actually map to executing a test on a real device? Obviously, at some point, you need to know how that high level action gets to the sort of, what I call the micro transaction level. So, being able to, find label, move a bit to the right, click to give it the focus, press button, and all that kind of stuff. So you've just seen that process on the screen. We use intelligent image recognition, and we also go into various other layers where that's helpful and where that's applicable. We understand the user experience, we understand the screen, we understand the underlying data structures automatically, and then we generate the code. So in addition to that high-level model auto-generating test cases, we're also auto-generating the detailed scripts that lie beneath that. We do that out of the box. We can also take your existing Selenium or QTP UFT or Gherkin Cucumber tests and attach them to a model. You can even just sort of point Eggplant AI at your existing test suite, so your existing Selenium or UFT test suite, and it will auto-generate a model and attach all those sort of individual snippets to the model. So really not trying to make anyone sort of start again, trying to reuse whatever assets you guys already have available. Now, some of you on the call may have experience of model-based testing before from other products. And model-based testing has obviously been around for a while, not using AI so much, but that kind of modeling concept has been around for a while. And I think some people have this feeling that it can be require quite a lot of upfront investment. I think this is especially because model-based testing tended to be used in the safety critical systems industry. So what you've got on your screen here is a really start to finish video of someone creating a model, again, for a Citibank mobile banking application, attaching and generating and attaching all the sort of snippets, i.e. the micro operations to really drive the device, and then running the test. Now, obviously that was sped up, but hopefully you could see from the video that that wasn't speeding up months and months and months of effort. That was speeding up like about an hour's effort. Clearly for someone who knew what they were doing and who knew the app, but just trying to give you the feel that when we talk about this automation, it's not a case of, you put in months of effort and then you get the automation and it's great. It really is, you can put a few hours in and just get orders of magnitude greater coverage than you have today. It's really exciting. It's sort of too good to believe. So most of you may be thinking, come on, where's the catch? To which I say, there isn't one. So please get in touch and give it a trial. I mean, this is really transforming how a lot of our customers are doing their testing. I mean, it easily enables people to do in-sprint testing. So, people can get all their new features added to their regression suite during the sprint, which obviously helps in a continuous delivery mode as well, and sort of gives you true sort of test-driven development as part of your Scrum Agile process. I think it's also transforming how the nature of a lot of teams. Testing has been traditionally quite a effort-intensive activity, and that's driven certain structures and how people like to set up their testing. But as you'd sort of hope, through intelligent automation, we still definitely need testers in the equation, but those testers are doing much higher value work, much more intelligent work. So it's changing test teams from being sort of armies of people just sort of maintaining scripts and fixing up XPiles to really a much higher value knowledge-based kind of activity, which probably sits a lot closer to the rest of your core development team. So all very exciting. As I said earlier, we have our Fusion automation engine, which is sort of the engine under the hood that actually goes and executes these test cases on the device. Our focus with our Fusion engine is all about just making sure on any device, on any system, no matter how complex, no matter how many different technologies involved, no matter how many different systems a single use case goes across, no matter what level you need to interact with the device, be it the UI, the DOM, the API, the database, the Universal Fusion engine can just do that and can reuse wherever possible the other assets you have. And then being able to take those tests and run them cross-platform, so you don't have to keep sort of obviously recreating the test. You can take the same test, you run it across any browser, any mobile device, any desktop, all easy, just using a lot of automation to take that effort away from the human. You know what you want to do. So once you know what you want to do, you should just be able to leave it to a computer. This is just an example of that. So as I said earlier, one of the things that most financial services institutions are doing over 2018 is adding a virtual assistant or some kind of voice channel to their offering. So we've got an example here of Eggplant testing an Alexa skill. So obviously it's a bit better with the sound, so apologies, I can't get this sound over the webinar. But basically what's happening right now is Eggplant has just said to Alexa, and you saw the lights flashing, give me the stock price of Amazon. And in a couple of seconds, what you'll see, that blue line, which if you've got very good eyesight, you'll see, is where Eggplant has been able to capture the voice and digitize it, and has said that Alexa said that the price of Amazon stock was $1,150.02. Then what it's done is it's gone to a mobile app to check the stock price, and it's quite an interesting demo, which is obviously why I'm showing it, because it's found a bug, which is why that test failed. It's found that whereas Alexa's saying it's 1150.02, the mobile app saying it's 1149.15. Now the reason for that is that the developers interpreted those requirements differently. So the Alexa developer decided that what people wanted was the closing price from the previous day, whereas what the mobile app developer decided was that it should be the live price. So there's a discrepancy, there's a difference. Now, in this sort of retail share price app, that's probably not that important. But if this was sort of a Bloomberg or a more industrial system, the fact that different people are getting different information at the same time could obviously be hugely damaging. And if you think about open banking and all these other initiatives going on, we really need to be able to make sure that all these different channels, Alexa, APIs, payment devices, ATMs, are all giving the same information. So we need to be able to execute tests across all those different channels. And that's exactly what Eggplant's great at. As I said earlier, Eggplant can test the full user experience. So really testing through the eyes of the user. Apologies for picking on HSBC here. So this is a bug they had on their website. The reason I use it is because all their tests passed, because it's there in the DOM. That's the login screen, the username box, the password box. They're all there in the DOM. It's just that no human can see it, which is a bit of a problem. So by really testing the full UX through the eyes of the user and understanding what a human's seeing, we can capture those kind of defects, which no one else can. We can definitely understand performance issues. So real sort of through the eyes of the user functional issues, performance issues, and also usability issues. So, and not just kind of, obviously we've got a bit of a click heat map here. We can do all that sort of stuff, but also really understanding how do sort of standard usability heuristics really apply in your domain, which heuristics matter, which heuristics impact customer satisfaction, and what transactions are happening. So we really can test that whole customer experience, functionality, performance, usability, really important. I mentioned earlier release insights. So this is the ability to understand, if I release my product now, what's going to be the impact on the user experience. So that's what release insights is all about. In our analytics, we prefer not to present a whole bunch of charts and a whole bunch of sort of time series and basically a whole lot of things to push the effort onto you to work out, what does this data mean, what matters. So we're trying to make our analytics pages as simple as possible and just say, here's what's going to happen, here's the impact. If you release now, you're going to get 3.5 stars and you're currently at 3. So actually that's okay, as opposed to 3.5 stars and you're currently at 4, because that wouldn't be good. What's going to be, what are the constituent factors? Development quality, performance, user experience, bug content, all these different predictors. So just trying to give you a clear set of what's got better, what's got worse, and how's that going to impact your users, rather than just sort of throw a whole lot of data and some charting tools at you. Though, of course, we can let you drill down into that if you want to, and you can get into other details. Real customer insights. This is part of customer experience insights that I talked about earlier. Again, all about understanding how is the technical behaviors of your product, performance, usability, exceptions on the page, layout, how are those technical aspects impacting conversions, session length, bounce rate, revenue, product adoption. Understanding that, because in itself, that's a very interesting thing to know, but then feeding that back into testing to guide Eggplant AI to focus its testing on the areas that matter, focus its performance testing on the pages that we think matter, focus on the pages where there are lots of defects, so there's a risk vector, and that it matters to users. So traditionally, we have this notion of risk-based testing, which is typically all about what are the areas most likely to have defects. Customer experience insights and real customer insights is all about marrying that up with a really quantified, real view on, and how much do those risks really impact the real user? So I think that's missing from most analyses. Some people have business impact, but that's not really measured off the user experience, whereas that's what we can do. We can, of course, plug in to your DevOps pipeline. So Eggplant today has over 600 customers. I'd say we're pretty much deployed with just about any DevOps tooling that you can imagine. I once heard that the average company has 32 different DevOps tools. So I think, given that we've got 600 customers, each of which apparently has 32 DevOps tools, I really do think we've seen them all. So test management tools, pipeline tools like Puppet and Chef, continuous integration tools like Travis, like Circle, obviously Jenkins, Bamboo, communications tools like Slack. So we very much want to make it easy for people to deploy us in their existing environment, and to be able to deploy different parts of our solution. So if there's only certain parts of it that make sense in your environment, not forcing people to take the whole set. But definitely, if you have a setup and you've had problems integrating other products into your DevOps environment, I can guarantee that's not going to be the case. So that's it. So thank you for your time. Hopefully that got you excited, that got you interested. You can see how this might apply in your domain, and you can see how this could help ensure your digital transformation is a success. But it's all good to see this kind of stuff. What you really want to see is everything in action. So I'm going to hand it over to James now to show Eggplant in action. Thank you very much. Over to you, James.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anthony. Hello, everyone. I'm James Gannon. I'm the lead customer success consultant for our financial services team at Eggplant. What I'll be showing you today is solutions that help you drive CXO, customer experience optimization. What you see on the screen at the moment is Eggplant AI. Eggplant AI is the brain of our digital automation intelligence suite. This is all about running your directed regression pack of tests, and additionally using AI reasoning to perform intelligent and meaningful testing. What you see here is the concepts Anthony was describing earlier. This is an AI model. Essentially, it's a digital twin of your application. So in this example, I've used the Citibank mobile app. What you'll see on the screen is you'll see we have states, which are user screens, and we also have actions. So different types of actions, but we have actions here as well, which are essentially what can the user perform on the screen. We can easily add these actions. We can easily add these user screens. Associated with each action, we also have properties, and these properties just tell us, okay, what type of action? Is it a back button, which can take us back? Is it weights, where we can actually set weights ourselves, say it's less likely we will do something? And then there's also the ability to add in our automation snippets. So we can use a mixture of automation snippets. We can use Eggplant Functional, we can use Appium, and there's UFT as well. So here we have our variables, which you can also add to particular actions. So for example, if you're searching for any, say, searching for anything on the screen, you can go ahead. We can also tag parts of our model. So we can say this was checked in by a particular person, or this is a particular type of action, and then we can generate trends and use the machine learning aspects. So first thing I'll do here is I'll just resize this, and then what you'll see here on the screen is we're going to execute a model. We're going to connect to a system, and we're going to say, hey, let's run through the model using the inputs that determine the next step. So the AI algorithm that will determine the next step in the model. These inputs are combination of book hunting, user coverage, obviously you can direct your tests, and then also real user journeys. So we can feedback real user journeys into this model to determine where we should be testing. So the idea is it's smart and meaningful testing. What you'll see here is when it hits an action inside of the model, it performs an action on the system under test. So what's determining the next step? Again, I said it is the actual AI algorithm, and that's the inputs that I just mentioned. So it's all to determine the next step in the model, to increase the intelligence of your testing, and also to provide meaningful testing. So I've set this to 3 iterations, which means we should get 3 iterations through the model. And what you'll notice is it's continuously learning from previous executions. So for example, if we did find a bug somewhere, then we should say, okay, maybe we should prioritize testing in that particular area or riff around that area. So what we'll do is we'll log in here again. It may take a different path. That's signing on. So something you notice is also I set it to 3 iterations, which just means it's going to run 3 times. But what you can actually do is you can also run this in a concurrent fashion. And that's what a lot of our customers do. They want to get the feedback loop. They want to have feedback as fast as possible. So you can run up to 10 concurrent iterations if you want, taking different journeys through your application. And obviously, you're getting feedback faster. Finally, I think we have one more iteration. And again, the whole idea here is that we can use the inputs to determine the next step in the model, but we can also use these inputs to perform dynamic, real-time, intelligent, and meaningful testing. What I'm going to show you next is how Eggplant AI can also perform directed tests. So we can use our directed or our regression pack. That's something else I'm going to show you as well. So we've run through them iterations, we're completed. We also have a coverage map when we run through these. So it tells us, okay, in our previous executions, what did we hit in the model, how many times we hit it, such as a hit count. And we can also look at a heat map, which tells us what part of our application did we cover. So it's basically a coverage overview. So you can see there's certain parts of the application we never covered. That's it. So next thing I'll show you is this test case builder, which is our directed tests and our regression pack. So inside of here, I can actually go to test case builder. And what you'll notice, I can add a new test case. When I add a new test case, I can name it. And I can go back to my model, and I can actually just click through the steps that I need to perform for this test case. What will happen is Eggplant AI will hit on the action. It will take the snippet that's behind that action and execute it. So we're no longer dealing with long scripts. We just hit individual actions in the model, and that would auto-generate a script for us. So I just list results. What you'll notice is there's also something where you see there's a white background, and that's global actions, actions that can happen at any time. So if I execute this, what you'll notice is it'll perform the actions that I've specified inside my test case builder. So I've got my user-directed test on my regression pack. So here it's going to perform exactly that. In this case, as I said, I've added a random action, so a global action, which can happen at any point. And the idea is that we want to emphasize the real user experience. What happens when real user behavior or real user journeys actually occur? So in this example, I've hit on the phone call. So what we're going to do is we're going to invoke another phone. So to say, when I'm using your app, what if a phone call comes in? And what if that phone call finishes, or what if it drops? So the idea is we want to emphasize the real user experience, real user journeys. So I've invoked the phone call. It should happen one more time again, invoking the phone call. So I declined it. Now it's going to call it again. I'm going to decline again. So a lot of people will also use this invoking of other devices or connecting to other devices throughout a flow or throughout a path. They'll use it for like one-time passwords. So when you have to log in, you get your one-time password as well. You can connect to a device and take that password and then jump back here and input it. We've looked at mobile. Obviously, Eggplant can connect to any device, any system, any operating system. And here we're just showing you a mainframe example. This mainframe example is where we're just interacting with, I think it's a 5290. We're just going to input some data. We can obviously read that data, and then we can jump to a front-end application as well and validate anything on the front end. So that's Eggplant AI. The whole idea here is that we can have our regression packs, our directed tests from here. We can also use AI-assisted testing and AI-assisted reasoning to understand the real user journeys and to perform real actions on the system under test.
Thank you everybody for joining today. Hope you've enjoyed our webinar, Customer Experience Optimization and Delivering a 5-Star Digital Experience Financial Services.